Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Punch Out Boxing's Ra Hokum and ESBR Boxing's Gregory Dial. Chaps, it's the first big fight of the year, first world title fight of the year. Jai Opetaia returns against late replacement opponent David Nyika. It's undefeated versus undefeated, puncher versus puncher, and yeah, Australia versus New Zealand as well. So it's actually a good fight to look forward to taking place on the 8th of January. Gonna cover a couple of things here, gents. We're not gonna beat around the bush. Jai Opetaia, best cruiserweight in the world, seen by most people. Strong favourite in this fight as well. What does 2025 look like for Jai Opetaia? We expect most people are expecting him to win on January the 8th, but I'm going to kind of let you kind of use your creative minds here in terms of could we see Jai Opetaia move up to heavyweight this year? Is he going to stay at cruiserweight? Could that Gilberto Ramirez happen? Could he possibly fight the winner of Beterbiev Bivol later in the year? There's a few exciting fights that we could see Opetaia in. Ra, what do you think 2025 looks like for Jai Opetaia?
I'm optimistic that he's going to finally get those big fights that he's been craving for the past couple of years and for various reasons haven't been forthcoming. I think get through this, which by the way, I think is a really hard fight, which we'll come on to. But I think get through this. I think it's very likely he'll get the Zurdo Ramirez fight next. And that's three of the four belts. Including his much coveted WBO title, which I believe he's got some family links with, which he really wants. I think he'll get that. Obviously, Riyadh season, they're very heavily involved with Tasman fighters, and I think they'll make that fight happen. Who knows? It could be part of the proposed Matchroom v Golden Boy card. But yeah, that'd be a great fight. The WBC title, I know that's all over the place, isn't it?
Mm.
Badou Jack's being reinstated, but then is Mikhailian still the champion in recess because of some contractual issues? So yeah, I mean, whether he becomes undisputed or not, a lot will be depend on how that WBC mess gets cleared up. But otherwise, I think he will cement his place or have the opportunity to cement his place as the number one cruiserweight in the world. Maybe the last couple of fights have put doubts on him in that regards, primarily because Bradis took him the distance again at the age of 40. As our friend Tockers on Twitter has pointed out, just how good was Bradis when you look at the fact that to this day he's Alexander Usyk's hardest ever opponent. So I think this is the year for Opetaia.
Yeah. Shame that Brodus did retire. And you kind of think what other fights he could have had this year. Greg, what about you? I think Raz kind of touched on the fact it is possible Opetaia could get undisputed status in 2025. Be fantastic. You want him to kind of have that chance, considering he is seen as the best cruiserweight in the world. But there's other possibilities as well. What do you see 2025 looking like for Opetaia?
Yeah, made a few good points there, Rat. I think the most likely is state cruiserweight and fight Ramirez. The only way I see Opetaia moving up now is if the belts become fragmented, and Usyk's already talking about potentially fighting Dubois. So I don't really think that that's going to happen. Could happen if Parker wins. Then you've got like a big derby, another New Zealand Australia derby between Opetaia and Joseph Parker. Beterbiev, Bivol, I see Beterbiev moving up if he wins. I don't see Bivol moving up. I don't think he's big enough for cruiserweight. So, yeah, guys, I think it's most likely he stays at cruiserweight and fights Gilberto Ramirez. I think that's the most likely option. But 2025, it could be exciting for him. He's got a few options there.
I hope so. I hope so. Jai Opetaia is a very exciting fighter, and you want exciting fighters and top quality fighters to be in big fights. And unfortunately, Opetaia, he's maybe not find the opponents that really challenge him. So yeah, you'll kind of want to see him main eventing as well because he's been on undercards as well so far in his career. But we'll see what happens. Touching on David Nyika himself, undefeated 10-0. I was watching an Eddie Hearn interview a few days ago who said that David Nyika was a potential opponent for Jai Opetaia anyway. Believe that if you want. I'll leave it up to you if you want to believe that or not. But a good fighter in his own right. We've seen him fight here over in the UK. We saw him fight on the undercard of Fury Usyk back in May. Greg, like we in a year's time, we could possibly see Jai Opetaia lead the cruiserweight division, which similar to kind of the possibly what's going to happen at heavyweight, the belts could become fragmented. Do you see David Nyika as one of those guys who can be a front runner to be a world champion at that 200 pounds?
It's a tough one because it will depend on his performance in this fight. If he starts to take a beating, I would want to see the corner pull him out because I watched a lot of David Nyika today. This guy can fight, Elliot. This guy can fight. He's 6'6". He's good to the body. Um, he, I'm not sure if this is factual or not, but I've been reading that he potentially holds a victory over Jai Opetaia in the amateurs. I don't know that for 100%, but he's a good fighter. Elliot. The only thing that he's going to need to watch out for is he looks as though he can get caught cold early. He's very stand up, and that Opetaia loves a fighter that stands up and doesn't move. So if it goes by 2, 3 rounds, etc., it's going to be a good fight. Another talking point: David Nika's never been by 5 rounds, but yeah, he looks well skilled, and I think this could be a hard fight if Opetaia doesn't get his tactics right.
Yeah, we'll see. It's obviously it's not the fight that Opetaia's been preparing for as well in his training camp. Um, and yeah, I just think I don't know. I'm not saying it's going to be a bit something that Opetaia's going to slip up on, but this I don't think this is going to be a straightforward fight. That's kind of my gut feeling for this one. Ra, thoughts on David Nyika? Is he a future world champion in your eyes?
I think so, yes. Um, I think he will become a world champion in the post-Opetaia wreckage of whatever's left of the cruiserweight division thereafter. I don't think he'll be a world champion on the 8th, but I think he'll make a very good account of himself. But the crop thereafter, there's a lot of good fighters, including quite a few Brits. But I think that the fact that the IBF is one of those governing bodies that likes to sort of highly rank fighters from obscure parts of the world, which is, I guess, why he's managed to get this title shot. I think that will work in his favor. And as Greg said, as long as he doesn't take too much of a beating, and like I said, I by no means think he will. I think he will come back from a defeat on the 8th and maneuver himself back into position, and then maybe a year or so from now pick up maybe an IBF vacant belt. So yes, I do think so. I was just having a look at his amateur record, as you mentioned there, Greg, about his whether he fought Jai Opetaia. I couldn't see his name on BoxRec, but he has fought all of the top amateurs. Chev Clark, he's got a win over Gadji Magomedov. He's fought him a couple of times. Tishenko, he's got a great pedigree behind him. As well as it being an Antipodean derby, it's also a Polynesian derby. I actually met Nyika at the Usyk Fury fight, spoke to him, and he said he's targeting Jai Opetaia. I actually said to him, look, kudos to you, because not many people are actually targeting Opetaia. And he says, look, Jai is rightfully the danger man of the division, but I want to be the best. And I'm not shying away for going for the most dangerous opponent. It is a bit early, maybe 6 months to a year too early for him, but he stood on business based on what he said, that he's targeting Opetaia. The opportunity came and he's taken it. So yeah, I think I think he's going to be a top level cruiserweight and maybe beyond that afterwards.
Yeah, look, and I think that's maybe kind of another talking point is the story of this fight going to be Nika's a future world champion, and if this fight was going to happen in 12 months, maybe it would be a more competitive fight. But right now, it's maybe a fight too soon if you consider Nika's only had 10 professional fights and he's going up against a kind of a top 10 pound for pound star. All right, chaps, going back to Opetaia, what's if we I don't want to use the word fantasy here, but if we're playing kind of fantasy boxing, a bit like the way kind of some people play fantasy football when you can just kind of pair certain fights against each other. What what really whets the appetite for you guys when it comes to Opetaia? Recently, he's been linked with, as Greg mentioned, the winner of Beterbiev Bivol, maybe more likely if that's Beterbiev rather than Bivol. There's Usyk's been linked with coming back down to cruiserweight. You could have a situation where you've got the best heavyweight in the world against the best cruiserweight in the world. There's Gilberto Ramirez really to certify yourself as the as the number one in the world, and maybe I'm missing someone out. Raul, I'll go back to you. What number one fight does it for you when it comes to Opetaia?
For me, it's easy. It's Alexander Usyk, especially in light of what we've seen recently. I think it's obvious that none of the so-called modern super heavyweights can live with Usyk's movement and stamina. Um, where I think Usyk could be defeated is by a fast-moving, fast-footed cruiserweight. Which, by the way, let's be real, cruiserweights are actually just the size heavyweights used to be 20 or 30 years ago, just on a diet. Yeah, so that is, I still believe, probably the optimal size for a heavyweight. There's certainly some American top-level coaches that believe that. They think that modern super heavyweights are actually too big. Fury aside, I think he's probably right that they're just too big and too lumbering, and someone skilled like an Usyk and like an Opetaia can outmaneuver him all night. But Opetaia comes with that venom, that punching power, combined with the speed of hand and foot. And let's not forget, Opetaia's whiskers look absolutely rock solid as well. So for me, that would be the most interesting fight for him. Of course, I don't think it's going to happen. I think a lot of Usyk's talk is probably just that. I wouldn't be surprised if he retires. Personally, I want him to retire, but I think if they could make that fight next, it'd be interesting. And it would have to be next because brilliant though Usyk is, he's closer to 40 than 30, which means he is in decline. We just haven't seen anyone good enough to exploit that decline, that physical decline yet. So I wouldn't want to see Opetaia, who's a fighter probably peaking in the next couple of years, take Usyk on when he's quite diminished. If it was to happen next, say in the late spring, summer, I think it would be one of the highest level fights out there. But I don't think it will happen because Usyk only wants the really biggest fights, and Opetaia still has unfinished business at cruiserweight.
Yeah,
But if it could, that would be the fight for me.
that's the fight for you. Okay, well we'll see. Look, hopefully it's a possibility. I think it would be maybe not the biggest fight out there financially in boxing, but it would still be kind of a massive fight. Greg, what fight really excites you when it comes to Opetaia? You can share Ra's view on a fight with Usyk if you'd like, or you could go for something else. I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, I don't want to put a dampener on things because I do rate Jai Opetaia, but I thought he looked quite human against Breedis the last time.
Hmm.
I know Breedis is a tough guy, but he was quite inactive, wasn't he? Breedis is approaching what 40 himself, and he was talking about Jake Paul, and then jumps into a fight with Opetaia, and he's quite competitive. So, and that's no discredit to Breedis. Breedis is a very good tough man in his own right. For me, the fight I want to see if he wins is Opetaia and Beterbiev. I think Beterbiev is quite, with the greatest respect, easy to hit, but he's so effective in what he does. I would like to see, can he stand up to Opetaia's power? And what would Opetaia do? The way that Beterbiev would march you down, it wouldn't give you peace. So for me, I think it's that one. Yeah, I'd like to see what would happen if Beterbiev went up and could Opetaia manage to hurt him, being a bigger man than what he's used to fighting.
Yeah, and possibly a more realistic option than the Usyk fight. You got to think if
Yeah,
Beterbiev can beat Bivol again on February 22nd, that's like what's there for, but what is there for Beterbiev to do? I mean, retirement will be an option, I'm sure, at the age of 40. But yeah, I think moving up, I think that's arguably most likely for Beterbiev. But we'll see, we'll see. But look, just hopefully we see Opetaia in some massive fights in 2025. All right, chaps. Thanks both of you for your time. We're going to finish off with predictions as always. Opetaia a heavy favourite in this fight. I will kick things off. I don't think this is an easy fight for Opetaia. I think I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on David Nyika. From what I've seen of him, I rate him, as I said earlier. Opetaia has not been training for David Nyika up until a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to go for an Opetaia stoppage. I'll go in the second time. I'll go in the second half of the fight. I'll go rounds 8 or 9. Greg, what's your prediction?
Not a million miles away from you, Elliot. I see a fight where I can see Nika potentially going down early if he's not careful because he is quite open. But to give him his respect, he's a good boxer, throws a good jab, he's a tall man. I think I probably fancy Opetaia in the second half for the last third of the fight between 8 and 12. Anything there, I think he might just find it a bit too tough at this point in his career. He's only been 5 rounds. Yes, some of these guys can step up. They can go to a level of their opponent when they do that step up. But I just think it's maybe a bit soon for him. So yeah, second half of the fight for me for Opetaia.
Yeah, no, we'll see. We've got to see with Opetaia. They're the same age. These guys, both 29s, but Opetaia's got a lot of world championship experience already. Ra, we'll leave things with you. What's your prediction for this one?
I do think Optai as well. I think that the experience he gained, primarily those two grueling fights with Breedis, that will make the difference. Because let's be honest, I don't think he'd have learned much fighting Thompson and Zorro. So I think that will be the difference. I don't think at the top level Opetaia is as murderous a puncher as he might be thought of because of the way he's dispatched sort of British level guys. Um, so I do see Nika with his size, his height, and his boxing ability to have enough about him to get to the final bell. I actually think he'll make it competitive. I think there'll be times in there where, yeah, he might even hurt Opetaia because we know that Opetaia doesn't shy away from getting, leaving himself open if he needs to be. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Nika have his moments. So I think it will be fairly competitive, but Opetaia will be a clear winner on points. And then hopefully move on to that big unification fight with Zordo, which is a totally different sort of fight and equally as fascinating.
Yeah, look, fingers crossed. All right, gents. Thanks for your time. As always, it's the first big fight of the year, so pleasure getting it kicked off with the two of you. Greg, Ra, thank you both for your time, and I'll speak to both of you again very, very soon.
Thanks, guys.